Money in the Bank fails to put butts in the seats. The country's top indie is accused of COVID test fraud, and things appear to be smoothing over between New Japan and one of its top stars. It's This Week in Regret. Hello and welcome to everyone. Brian Zane here with some of the biggest wrestling stories to drop in the last 7 days. New today, New Japan Pro Wrestling is standing behind Kota Ibushi after the former world champion went on a Twitter tirade against higher-ups a couple of weeks ago. Earlier Friday, New Japan President Takami Obari and president of their parent company Bushiroad Takaki Kidani held a press conference to discuss the latest between the company and Ibushi. In their statements, Ibushi violated his New Japan contract in March when he appeared at Taka Michinoku's Just Tap Out event, but after assuring management he had no plans on leaving New Japan, he received a reprimand and nothing else. Later, Ibushi began butting heads with Kikuchi, a member of New Japan's talent relations department, over Kota's contract status and possibly coming back to the ring before he was healed from injury. The conflict apparently led to Ibushi's mother suffering emotional distress and even attempting suicide, which is what prompted Ibushi's tweet storm earlier this month. Ibushi had a meeting with Kidani and Obari on Thursday to discuss matters, and in the end, officials say that Ibushi will remain under contract, though at a reduced salary for breaching his contract and divulging company secrets. His return to the ring remains unknown. Meanwhile, management says Kikuchi will receive some sort of punishment for his involvement, though specific consequences aren't known at this time. Well, I think when those tweets first began coming to the surface a couple weeks ago, a lot of fans, myself included, were kind of expecting the worst to come from this, but it's good to see that the two sides have reached an agreement and things are smoothing over. It's great to see New Japan management throwing their support behind Ibushi and giving him as much time as he needs to heal from his injury to come back to the ring, which is, of course, the most important thing for wrestling, and hopefully when he does return, that both sides can return to a fully amicable relationship. Yay for talking things out. Back here in the States, some fans who bought tickets to WWE's Money in the Bank event in Las Vegas could be shut out from going at all, as the show has been moved to a smaller venue. It was first reported Thursday that WWE is relocating Money in the Bank on Saturday, July 2nd, from the 70,000-seat Allegiant Stadium to the 12,000-seat MGM Grand Garden Arena. The move comes as a result of low ticket sales. Fans who'd already purchased tickets received an email with a message that their previous purchase would be refunded and included a pre-sale code for tickets in the new venue. It's worth pointing out that the number of tickets sold for Allegiant is actually greater than the estimated seats available at MGM Grand, meaning some of those ticket holders won't be able to get new tickets. So, quick question, whose bright idea was it to book a stadium show for Money in the Bank? As exciting as the show can be sometimes, it's nowhere near the level of a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam. You probably couldn't even fill a baseball stadium like for a Royal Rumble with that show. Maybe they could have sold more tickets if they didn't just have a two-night stadium show in April back in Dallas, or they weren't going to have another stadium show later in the same month in Nashville for SummerSlam, or maybe they shouldn't have run in the same town that AEW was for this weekend for Double or Nothing, or running the same weekend as UFC. I feel terrible for the fans who are going to be shut out as a result of this venue change. Talk about WWE disappointing the fans, something they just accused Sasha Banks and Naomi of doing last week. You gotta believe a lot of these fans have already paid for expensive flights and hotels and whatnot, and now one of the biggest reasons they're going to Las Vegas that weekend might no longer be an option for them. So needless to say, there's going to be some angry members of the WWE universe as a result of this. But hopefully there's any consolation. There's always the bright lights and the glitz of the Las Vegas Strip to distract them. But back to the terrible idea of booking the show in a giant stadium. This appears to be the first real blow to company president Nick Khan's strategy of doing more shows per year in venues that size. But seeing what happened to Money in the Bank this year shows to me it's more than the market can bear, having that many stadium shows that close together. Not only that, they still need a TV product to justify fans packing stadiums that size more than once or twice a year. And let's just say, they're not there yet. Speaking of WWE, if you're expecting the brand split to end soon because the Bloodline have consolidated the belts, maybe think again. Brian Alvarez recently theorized that the split was, quote, essentially done as more Raw wrestlers are showing up on SmackDown. But Andrew Zarian of Figure 4 Weekly tweeted out on Wednesday that apparently the brand split will still be adhered to, though wrestlers will be able to move around depending on the story. Which to me kind of sounds like how things were at the tail end of the original brand split. Wrestlers going from show to show with no rhyme or reason, and we all know how fun that felt as viewers. I really don't see the brand split ending anytime soon, especially with Raw and SmackDown on two different networks, and we're always hearing those stories and reports of the networks wanting specific demands of WWE for Raw and SmackDown. Not only that, ending the split could be disastrous for some mid and lower card wrestlers who are having a hard time as it is making airtime. But either way, it's all speculation at this point until WWE makes a decision. With that being said, what are your thoughts on the brand split at this point? Do you want to see it end or keep going? Let me know in the comment section. Game Changer Wrestling and its owner, Brett Lauderdale, accused of faking COVID test results to keep their wrestlers on shows. Earlier this week, a California-based wrestler and promoter named Mikey Gordon, who works under the name Dirty Ron McDonald, published a Facebook post alleging that Lauderdale had hired him to produce fake negative COVID results between October 2020 and January 2021. He posted what he claims to be screen grabs of text between he and Lauderdale making reference to the alleged plot, along with copies of what appear to be those negative test results. Among other things, the post also accuses Lauderdale of underpaying his talent. But since the accusations, some wrestlers have shared their experiences to the contrary, including Jordan Oliver, Alex Colon, and Tony Deppen. Another possible discrepancy is that the alleged text messages between them seem to begin at the end of the period Gordon claims Lauderdale purchased fake results. Meanwhile, Lauderdale himself made a brief statement to Sean Ross Sapp saying, quote, "I've referred this matter to my lawyer, and as much as I'd like to comment, I've been advised not to," end quote. Now, these are some serious allegations, but the important thing is they are just that. They are allegations. Nothing has been proven yet. If the story is true, then it is unbelievably irresponsible and dangerous for GCW and Dirty Ron to go about doing such a thing. Not to mention, faking COVID test results is a felony. Now, I understand as a promoter the desire to keep your planned show as intact as humanly possible and doing whatever you can to keep those wrestlers you've announced staying on the show. Personally, I just find it hard to believe that any wrestling promoter would be willing to risk everything by doing something like getting fake test results. Also, did Mikey Gordon just implicate himself in a felony by making all this public? It's a bold strategy if that's the case. Obviously, there may be more details as the story develops, and you can stay right here on This Week in Regret for the updates. We have an update on WWE Hall of Famer Tammy Sytch. She's been hit with a civil lawsuit stemming from a DUI car crash that left one man dead. The family of Julian Lasseter is suing Sytch, better known as Sonny, for damages in excess of $100,000 after she allegedly struck Lasseter's car from behind while driving under the influence and without a valid license on March 25th. The 75-year-old Lasseter died soon after the crash. Sonny's boyfriend, James Pent, is also named in the lawsuit, accused of being vicariously liable since it was his vehicle that she was driving. Sytch is scheduled to be arraigned for DUI manslaughter charges this coming Tuesday. If found guilty, she faces up to 30 years in prison. Well, in other lighter news, the wrestling podcast world's about to get a little more full starting next week with two new shows. It was announced this week that William Regal will get behind the podcast mic with Gentleman Villain alongside co-host Matt Kuhn starting next Thursday, June 2nd. And if that's not enough, it's also been revealed that the hardcore legend Mick Foley will have a new show alongside Conrad Thompson, Foley is Pod, dropping one day later, Friday, June 3rd. These shows are the newest in the Conradiverse and of course will be available on adfreeshows.com. And me personally, I'm very excited for these two podcasts dropping soon. I love Mick Foley as a storyteller. He has such a colorful way with the English language, and he has a lot of great stories to tell. He's had a long, storied career, no doubt, with a lot of interesting, fascinating moments. I'd love to hear his perspective on it with a new, modern take on things. As for William Regal, I feel the same way. He's lived an incredible life, had an incredible career, and I just can't wait to hear what he's got to say on some of the things that have happened in his life, especially after his autobiography was published. A lot has happened since Walking a Golden Mile was published, so I'd love to hear his thoughts, not only looking back on maybe some of those career moments from that earlier time, but also things that have happened since then. So, like I said before, very excited for those. What do you all think? Well, time now to talk about my favorite thing in wrestling this week. Now, if you watched AEW Dynamite on Wednesday, then you saw the arrival of Jeff Cobb and Great O-Khan, collectively known as United Empire. But for the Japan native Great O-Khan, that was just the beginning of his wild adventure in Las Vegas. Take a look at these pictures and videos on social media from his time in Sin City this week, getting whipped by an employee at the Heart Attack Grill on Fremont Street, hanging out with the ladies, and cuddling up with a mechanical bull-like piece of equipment, among other things. Truly, Great O-Khan is living his best life in Las Vegas. You'll love to see it.
Come on! Go! Go! Yes! Yes!
Well, that's going to do it for This Week in Regret, folks. Thank you all so much for watching and, of course, listening on the SoundCloud. Stay tuned to the channel this weekend for my Double or Nothing predictions and my review of the pay-per-view, dropping either Sunday night or Monday morning. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.